Hello, my friends. This is Leo Babauta of Zen Habits, and in this video, we're going to talk about holding yourself accountable. And this is something that a lot of people resist. We don't like accountability, and it feels like a kind of way that we can just kind of beat ourselves up, another whip that we might use, another hammer we might use to hurt ourselves, because we've been taught that that's what accountability means. But in this video, I'm going to talk about how accountability can be used as a tool to skyrocket your progress, to actually help you to achieve your goals, to take yourself to the next level of whatever you're doing. And how do we, instead of using it as another like whip or club to beat ourselves with, how do we actually develop a new relationship with accountability that can help us to do it in a way that doesn't feel harsh or like mean to ourselves, but actually really like loving and supportive and powerful. So we're going to talk about a new way to hold yourself accountable if your old way has been all about blame and shame and negativity and guilt and all of that kind of fun stuff. So let's talk about it. Let's dig into this. Holding ourselves accountable. And in a future video, I'd like to talk about holding others accountable and some really big, powerful shifts for how to do that in a way that is different than how most people have learned to do that and why we resist it and how to overcome it. So that's another video. A follow-up video will be how to hold others accountable. But to start with, we have to look at how do we hold ourselves accountable? Because it's one thing to want to hold others accountable, if that is something that you want to do, but we have to start with ourselves by modeling it, by learning about how it works with ourselves, and then to create a new relationship to that kind of accountability. It will actually shift a lot. If what you want to do is help others to hold themselves accountable, we want to start with ourselves. But even if you don't have anybody else who needs to be accountable, holding yourself accountable can still be a really, really powerful tool for whatever it is you're trying to do. Let's imagine that you're trying to achieve an exercise goal, like lift, a certain, amount of, bench press or squats. Maybe you want to run a faster 5K, or you want to finally run a marathon. Maybe you want to, do a 100-mile cycle. Whatever it is that you want to do, those are like exercise goals, but there could be write a book. Maybe you want to, start a nonprofit or start a business. Maybe you want to, really anything, any goal that you might have. We're going to talk about how accountability can actually help that. So let's talk about how, let's say you don't like to hold yourself accountable. You're like, no, I don't like that. It sounds really harsh on myself. I'm not going to do that. Actually, let's back up a little bit. Let's look at how people start with accountability. Often they will use it as a whip, right? So I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to tell everybody I'm going to do this thing. Let's say I'm going to work out every single day, and I'm going to tell you, like, hold myself accountable for doing it. And then when you inevitably fail, you fall on your face at some point, you can then say, I didn't do it, and I have to tell everybody, and now it feels really terrible because I have to shame myself, publicly shame myself in front of these people who I promised I would do this, and it feels like I'm letting them down because I promised I would do it, and it also feels like I should, I've failed and I've really embarrassed myself. And so if this is how you do accountability, it's not going to feel good, right? Publicly shaming yourself, embarrassing yourself in front of others, like telling people how you failed, like, it's going to feel really, it's going to be filled with shame, guilt, embarrassment, all of these kind of like negative, harsh kinds of things. So people will, to their credit, people will actually do this and stick with it for a while, like really just hold themselves accountable and, publicly flog themselves because they think that they should and that it's going to help them. But doing it in this way feels really like bad, right? It feels harsh, and we're like punishing ourselves in public. We're shaming ourselves. And this is not something that is actually helpful to us. It actually makes us feel more discouraged, makes us not want to hold ourselves accountable, and eventually we will stop. Right? There's only so long you can like make yourself go through suffering. And so we'll stop and then we will learn a lesson from it, which is kind of our interpretation of how that went. And the lesson might be, I'm not going to do accountability anymore. It sucks. It makes me feel terrible, right? So people often will feel freedom from that. It's like, oh, I'm just going to not do that anymore. So what they will do is try and do things on their own in private. And so I'm going to, let's say I want to run a marathon. I'm going to start running, but I'm not going to tell anybody about it. And if I miss a day, fine. Like no one will know. And that's kind of how people go. That's where people end up, is that they don't hold themselves accountable. They don't commit publicly or to anyone else. And they just kind of privately kind of like do things in secret. I want to learn Spanish or French. I'm going to do it without telling anybody about it. I'm going to do it kind of on my own, do some Duolingo in my spare time. And then, magically I'm going to get really good at it. Doesn't tend to have good results for a number of reasons. One is um, we're just basically letting ourselves out of a scary place, letting ourselves off the hook. And so when we fail, we just feel like, it's totally fine. And that's really just letting ourselves off the hook. Um, and often when we fail and we just say like it's totally fine, we don't actually commit again to starting again. Sometimes we do for a little bit, but um, there's no kind of external structure holding us to facing these difficult things. And so we eventually will just let ourselves out of this scary place of having to face difficult things. And so we just won't do it. Also, we tend to struggle in private, which means we can never get any kind of support. We can never feel connected to others who are doing something similar. We never have community because we have to do it in private so we don't shame ourselves. And so we don't get supported. We're doing it alone. If we are struggling with some disappointment or discouragement, there's really nothing we can do about it except give up, right? And so that's how that tends to go, is we might force ourselves to do it on our own in private a little bit, but eventually we're going to let ourselves off the hook out of that scary place. We're going to get discouraged and not get any kind of support. We're going to be alone, and that can feel safe, but it doesn't ever feel very good doing it alone. Doesn't often feel very good. Okay, so those are the two ways that accountability generally goes for people. What I want to show you is another way. So it's not doing it in private and just letting yourself off the hook, but it's also not flogging yourself publicly and shaming yourself. What if we could remove all the shame, all of the guilt, all of the harshness out of accountability, out of failure, out of, like missing a day or three? What if there was none of that? What if it's simply an accounting? Did I do it or not? Did I do it or not? There, you can hear in the did I do it or not, often people will have a judgment there. I didn't do it. That means I'm bad. I'm embarrassing. There's something wrong with me. I'm not doing a good job. I'm not strong. I'm not committed. I'm not consistent. I'm not disciplined. We take that did I do it or not as a judgment of ourselves. And what I want to encourage is to drop that interpretation of the results and just look at the results in terms of how can I learn from this to get better? That's the interpretation we want to look for, is what does this say, not about me as a person and how embarrassing I am, but more, what does this say about what I can learn to get better at what I'm trying to do? How do I use this to improve my progress over the long run? So if I missed a day, why? What happened there? It's not that I suck. Well, let's just assume I don't suck. Let's just assume it's not about anything about my worth, about my discipline, about my strength, courage, any of that stuff. This is all about the method that I'm using. Am I using a method that could be improved? Well, if I missed a day, of course, like how do I improve the method? And by doing that, I can get better and better at it. For example, let's say I missed a day. Maybe, I just felt tired. Okay, what would I like to do next time that I feel tired? Well, maybe I like to just go for a short walk instead of doing the run that I planned, in the running example. Maybe I want to write, one paragraph instead of half a chapter of the book that I'm writing. So, I change what I do when I get tired. Maybe I can notice that there's a thought that I tell myself, like, oh, it doesn't matter if I miss a day. Maybe I need to catch that thought and change it. It does matter. Every single day that I do something adds up in the long run. And so I really want to just be building a long run success with little tiny steps. So little tiny steps actually do matter. So I need to tell myself that when I start thinking the thought, oh, it doesn't matter if I miss a day. It matters. Long term success is built on days like this when I don't feel like doing it and I tell myself it doesn't matter. It matters. This is actually how I'm going to build it. So I want to find those kinds of things in my thinking so that I can replace them with something that's going to lead to longer term success. So that is the information that I can get if I hold myself accountable. And look, did I do it today or not? No. Okay, what got in the way? What thoughts can I find? What do I notice? What are the obstacles and how am I going to deal with those obstacles? And through this accountability, actually, we'll be learning a lot about ourselves. Not are we good or bad, but more like, oh, how does my mind work when I'm facing tiredness or discomfort or fear? Which way do I tend to go when I am in that scary place? And how would I like to change that pattern? So we're learning something about ourselves so that we can long term change our results. So that's how accountability can really help us, is it actually shines a light on things that are blocking us and helps us to improve that over time. So again, as opposed to it being a judgment about my worth, how good I am, let's look at it as information that's going to help me to remove some of these barriers, to change my thinking, to learn a better method so that I can actually have better results long run. Now, if you use accountability in this way, it will have vast, vast, powerful effects on your life. So, how do we actually do that? Well, my recommendation is to make a commitment. How often do you want to do something? Right? So, let's say I want to run 3 times a week. Commit to running 3 times a week and then commit to holding yourself accountable. How will you hold yourself accountable? Well, I'm going to post on Blue Sky or Instagram or TikTok or whatever every time I do it or don't do it. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you're going to get a post from me, whether I did it or not, and you'll know how I did it. Or maybe I have a Google spreadsheet that's going to like track how I'm doing with things, and I'm going to share it with a small group of people. Or maybe I have a one-on-one accountability partner, and every day we text each other through text messages or WhatsApp or Telegram, and we like just share how it went. Or maybe I have a meditation group of 5 different people, and every day we just post a heart emoji if we meditated. And in this way, I'm doing a simple accounting with one or more people. Here's my commitment. Here's my commitment to hold myself accountable, and then actually hold myself accountable. For other cases, it might be a weekly or a monthly review. So let's review. I committed to doing it 5 days last week. How many days did I actually do it? So, for example, I have someone who I commit to in terms of exercise and nutrition. Every Saturday, we send each other a text message and we share, like, how did it go? I also have another accountability group that is a monthly email, and there's a few of us in that email thread, and we basically just post a review of how our month went, including how we did with our goals, and then post our goals for the coming month. And this way, I hold myself accountable every month, but also every week for specific goals. And other goals, I might actually choose daily accountability. So these are some ways to hold yourself accountable. And what we want to do is to look at how we relate to that accountability. Is it a way to publicly flog myself, to shame myself, to be harsh on myself, to beat myself up? Or is this a judgment on who I am and my worth? Or is this a way to learn about myself, to get better, to improve my method, to have better long-term results, which is actually what I want. I want to like run that marathon, right? Well, this is part of the path to get there. Part of the path is actually going out and doing some training, but other part of the path might be learning about, running techniques or equipment. So that's a tool to help me with my marathon. And then accountability is another. So these are just tools to be used to improve, to make better long-term progress, to learn about myself, and to start to shift some of the old stuff that's getting in the way. That's what accountability is. And we want to start to view it in that way rather than a way to beat myself up, flog myself publicly, shame myself, judge myself. That is not a healthy relationship to accountability. Of course, if that's how we relate to accountability, we're going to try and stop. And so instead, develop a healthy relationship to accountability so that it can help you long run in what you're trying to do. That's what I've got to say about accountability. I hope this helps. Again, I will do a follow-up video on changing your relationship to accountability, to holding others accountable, but we start with ourselves. If you'd like to hold yourself accountable, make some commitments to others and commit to holding yourself accountable to those commitments, and then change your relationship. View this as information to help you get better rather than a judgment on who you are. And in that way, we'll be retraining our minds, training old mental habits into new ones that are going to help us change our long-term results. This is a loving, compassionate thing to do for yourself if the compassionate thing to do for yourself is to learn more about yourself and to improve your long-term results and what you're trying to do in your life. So that's me, Leo Babauta of Zen Habits, sharing my thoughts on accountability. I think this is a key tool in everything that I've been doing, including this YouTube channel. And I would love for you to share your thoughts on accountability. What struggles do you have? What questions do you have? How have you used it successfully? Please share in the comments below. And as always, please subscribe if you want to get more of this content. It really helps me to grow my community if you subscribe, if you give it a thumbs up so that others can find it, and then share it with others who could use some Zen habits in their lives. I bet you have someone in your life who could really use a new, fresh take on accountability and how we relate to it. So share it with them. I think this is a loving thing to do. Okay, my friends, I will talk to you later. This is Leo saying goodbye. Have a good one.